Hello, this is Lisa Rusczyk
And Misty Lorh.
with the podcast We're All Psychic. And today we have yet another freaking amazing guest. Her name is Liz. Liz, would you like to say hello?
Hello.
And hello, Liz. We're happy to have you. Misty, would you like to ask Liz a question?
Sure, Liz. Do you think that we're all psychic?
That is a fabulous question. I do think that people are all inherently psychic. I think the way in which the psychic ability emerges is the differentiation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yes, yes. And sometimes one thing can appear and then years later another thing kind of grows out of it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've had that experience. Yeah. So what brought you to that? Have you always been raised around this kind of mindset, or did you develop it on your own, or did you have help?
That's a wild story. So I got to take this all the way back to when I was in kindergarten. I was raised by a devout Catholic mom who was not anywhere open to any of this stuff. And so she sent me like any Catholic sent me to a nice Catholic school. And
Me too.
I never I never really thought anything of it, right? Because it was just normal for me, like talking to the, quote unquote, invisible friends.
So it's always been like that for you. And
it's always been like that. I was an only child, and grew up an only child. So being little, I would play outside by myself, and I would have all these friends all around me, and they were spirits and elements, and some people call them fair folk or whatever. And I would just be outside and playing with all the things and just being myself. Right. Yeah. And it was just normal. So when I went to school and was getting reprimanded by the nun that was the teacher for talking in class, and like her not understanding who I was talking to, and oh yeah, it was a whole thing, because like she's like, oh, you need to stop talking. And so my neighbor, the student next to me, would get in trouble. And so eventually she moved me all the way to the back of the class by myself. And I was still talking, and she's like, I don't understand who you're talking to. And so I was telling her, this kid or that person, or the dead kid, the dead person. And so
how did she react?
Well, she told my mother I was expelled. I was expelled.
And, were they saying you were like, talking to demons and stuff? Because
possessed, yes.
Yeah. I worked in a Catholic church, and I read palms. This is in like Phoenix of all places in 2005, 6, 4. I ran churches, and the Methodist church was okay, but the Catholics, I had a really good friend that would sometimes substitute on the soundboard for me, and he always sat back there and talked to me. After a year and a half, he always had this hand putty he was playing with. And after a year and a half, I said, ooh, that hand putty, let me play with it. And I said, this is great for palm reading. And he says, every time you read a palm, everything you say, the devil makes come true.
What?
Yeah, but that's like, but what's weird is upbringing. My upbringing was Catholic, but it was all okay to be psychic, and it was okay to explore that side of ourselves here. But some people don't have that same, belief in their religions. So yeah.
Oh no.
What was your experience after you got expelled? What did you feel like?
Oh my God. Well, my mother, she sheltered me from some of that. I didn't find out until later that they told my mom that I needed an exorcism.
No.
And that I was, yeah.
And that I was demons, the devil's child. Snotting like Reagan and stuff, right?
And it's like, this is really? The 90s, I mean, so it was kind of right at the height of, the satanic panic. So it was like, I get it. Not to date myself, but I mean, so
I know we're on the same. We're probably the same age. Yeah,
probably. You look quite young though, if I do say so.
I'm 48, and Misty, you're 40.
46.
46. Yeah.
You guys look great. I'm telling you, it's just something about your guys' generation, the Gen X. Mm-hmm. I'm the Zennial. I'm like right in between Gen X and Millennial.
That's
like
funny.
I'm a Millennial, but I'm an elder.
I totally just read an article on Facebook. Somebody wrote a post about being, what was the word again you just said? Genial.
Zennial.
Yeah, I just like maybe an hour ago read a big long thing about what that was. And I was like, oh wow, okay, I didn't know. And that makes sense. You know what I read?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wild because like they explain us as being the walker of two worlds, and I grew up being a walker of two worlds already, right? Like, I was, straddling both, the living realm and the other realm, right?
So in
So
society and in your spirituality, you were kind of in a couple worlds, like feet and hands
indeed,
in. Yeah.
right? Absolutely.
So did your mother, obviously your mother didn't believe that you needed an exorcism, right?
Right. Yeah. So, but, there was a lot of guilt on there from her because, like, for her, I was her miracle child. She had me at 40. And she met my dad, and she was raised, well, I should back way up here, and she was raised in an orphanage in Colony here in New York. And so she was raised in a Catholic orphanage, St. Coleman's, and was
God
going to
really
become
is her family. The Catholic
yes,
Catholic religion would be her family. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
absolutely. And so she was going to become an apostate, which is like basically a beginning nun.
Yeah.
And she went out on, like, I guess she said that they have like a rumspringa, kind of like how the Amish do, where they are forced to go out into the world for a
Oh, I
period
know
of
what that is.
time.
Devil's Playground. Yeah, I
Yep,
saw
yep.
a show called Devil's Play. They call it the Devil's Playground. Yeah, I saw that in a show anyway.
So she went out for her frolic amongst, the regulars, and ended up having my sister. So she didn't ever go back to being a nun, but she gave my sister away to a family member because back in the 60s, unwed young women that are 19 or 20, they don't keep their babies. They don't get to,
Right.
So that was a thing. And then in her timeline, birth control became legal and abortion became legal, and all the things that she could do to prevent and choose whether or not she was going to keep or punt that little miracle back into the universe. So she felt like, because she had had a couple of abortions between my sister and I, that and she became a born again Christian when she met my father, that I was her forgiveness, right? That I was her
Wow,
ability
that's a
to
lot of responsibility to put
repent.
on you. Yeah. Did you feel that from
Right.
her? Like her
Oh, she
expectation?
told me that often. She would tell me that all the time. She's like, "You're supposed to be my redemption." She would be so disappointed in
Like you
what I'm
don't have
doing,
your
and
own
she'd be
life.
like,
You're just an extension of what she is being served in life or something. Or yeah.
and that's like literally the definition of coming up in a toxic household, is that you can have that one parent that you're supposed to be an extension of them. You're not allowed to be an individual. And
Yeah.
so obviously I became an empath because I had to be
Yeah.
very aware of the
Mood
emotions
changes.
and be
Because
right.
sometimes they're not hard on you, and sometimes they are, and you don't know when. You got to feel it out. What do I need to say here? What's going to happen? What's the atmosphere?
Yeah. Yep. And so yeah, it was really put on me that I was supposed to be, everything this godly child that she was supposed to have, and I was
That's a
supposed to be
lot.
her forgiveness. And so I have this joke now that it's like that I'm karma, right? Like I'm
Mom's
karma.
karma.
Yeah, that like I came around and I gave my mom a really hard time. I had ADHD. I was a wild kid. I was like pagan AF right from the beginning, right? So I didn't want nothing to do with that garbage. Like, I like being out in the trees and with the birds and the animals. And I remember even being like 8 years old, and my mom was doing like Bible studies inside, and I was just outside, and I'm like, this is my church. Like,
Yeah.
this is where I get my soul fed. It's just laying in the grass looking at the clouds.
Yeah. For me, I felt that way, but I never had words for it. Like, this feels like my church, or this feels like my sacred space, outside. Because I was always outside too, like you. Missy, you were too, weren't you?
Oh yeah, that was
You're
my
all
home.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
So listeners and watchers, or I'm sorry, it's not a video podcast. We decided to do audio. It's just an audio podcast. Elizabeth, or was what her name was when I first was introduced to her, and now we're on very close terms. She is Liz.
Mm-hmm.
So as of today, so Liz was telling me in an email that she has some theories about how trauma does unlock some things and open them up really young for all. And it's really interesting you say that, Liz, because a lot of our guests, almost all of them, have said they had trauma who were working with the energy early and young. They said trauma kind of awakened it or made them start feeling and working with, like you just said, working with the empathy to know what to do in a situation before it happens.
Absolutely.
It's just so fascinating. So listeners, she's going to let us know about that. Like how do you feel about that? Is that like kind of what you were getting at there? Or,
Yeah, I think that, like, I was born with some natural gifts, but I think that because I was traumatized from the beginning, unlike most people where I was conditioned out of it, but because I had that trauma right from the beginning, that responsibility put on me right from the beginning, and then just trauma after trauma after that, like there's just it's so complex from that point on. And but because I never got out of the survival mode until I was in my 30s, I never lost it, right? I never lost that empathy. And then going right from a toxic mother to a toxic relationship, right? Because we marry our parents, right? And my mom raising me by herself, like I found a man that was almost exactly like my mom. And so, I was still in that survival mode right up until I was 33 and decided to walk away. So
how hard was that to walk away? Were you done or was it hard?
I was done. I had two boys I have two boys from a previous marriage that were very bonded with him. And so I stayed because he was really good to them. And it wasn't until he decided to start attacking them because he couldn't hurt me anymore that I decided to be done.
Yeah, that's not good.
I'm like, I either need to be done or I'm going to be in jail. Like,
Liz, you sound like us. Misty and I have often talked about on this podcast how we kind of have to learn the hard way. It's not a great quality. It's how you really learn it. We've joked about, but I feel like, I don't know if you feel this way. Some of us who are called into this kind of work to help other people heal in some fashion of their spirit or personality or emotions, bring them peace, overall with readings or help that we can offer in a spiritual aspect or a divination aspect. I feel like a lot of people really benefit from just that interaction, of getting the reading. And I found that, like, for you, maybe all these experiences, maybe you would see this way too, but all the bad things that have happened to me, that I was just like, oh God, that was crushing. I really had to learn some hard and do it over and over and over to learn it. But I'm ever grateful that I did, but I don't know why I have to learn the hard way. I mean, I kind of have common sense sometimes, and there's really something back to saying, rah, 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 and it's just like, doesn't know, for me personally, I'm kind of in a confused place in my life. And right now, so this is a really interesting topic. I don't feel like I had trauma as a child, but I did have like conditional kind of situations, with, like, I had to always be I felt like I had to be a certain way, but I wasn't very self-conscious until I was about 12. That's when my self-conscious, and that's when the empathy developed and everything. Otherwise, I was just a wild kid playing in the woods, pretending I was a cat, and everyone was fine. So what would you advise to people who may not have recognized that this is part of why they're sensitive and it's really happening? For a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I think they want to know what's happening. They want validation,
So the reason why the trauma, is that what you're asking? Like the reason why the trauma?
Well, like pointing out to them, like advising them kind of like what to point out to them, how they're using their energy because of the trauma, and what they can do to get rid of the trauma with the energy itself.
Oh, fabulous.
Get rid of it, heal from it. I was kind of free phrasing it, but yeah.
Right. That's actually a really great question. And so the reason, so all right, so when we get into situations, whether it's with our parents or whether it's with our significant others, and sometimes it can even be with our own damn kids, like let's not beat around the bush here. Like, we raise our kids a certain way, but we're only responsible for so much of their personality, and then the rest comes from outside. So you very well could have a kid that's a manipulator and has these mood swings and whatever. But anyway, I digress.
Yes. That's
You
what you're
get into
saying.
you get in these situations either with your parents or with someone else. It could even be a friend. Usually it's not always with, it doesn't always start with your family. It can start with a relationship. But so you get into these situations with people. You're either born into them or you get into them. And this person has a way of kind of slowly making it feel like you're the problem, right?
Oh yeah.
That they
Does that sound
are,
familiar?
yeah, that
We all
like
know that one. Yeah.
they're perfect. They don't do anything wrong. You have issues. You have insecurity issues, and that's why you're feeling this type of way. It's like, oh no, you're possessive over me because you have problems.
Yes, you're
You're not
projecting
possessive.
them.
Yeah. You're not, you don't have insecurity issues because I am projecting the behavior that is making you worry about my fidelity. You have issues, not
Yeah.
me. I put that there to test you and you failed. I did that to test you and you failed. Why are you acting this way? Like, and
Like it's your
gaslighting you.
fault that he cheated. That kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
People
Like
like to do
if you
that. People
hadn't
like
have
to do
said
that.
that, if we hadn't have had that argument, I wouldn't have went out. I wouldn't have gotten
Oh
drunk.
yeah, it's
I
your
wouldn't have met
fault.
her.
Oh yeah. He
Right. It's
accidentally
so your
slipped
fault.
and
Yep.
well, just because of you tripped him.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
hate that for you. I'm so sorry.
I mean, and it's more common, unfortunately, than
Well, how
what
did
a
you
lot of
get your
women talk
healing
about.
done? Have you healed like how did you progress with your healing from a relationship like that? Because I had one
Hmm.
like that and it was very difficult for a long time. And I'm only a couple of years out of it, the marriage. And I still have issue with like feeling I'm being dominated. Sometimes I'm not a
Hmm.
good judge of when I am or not. And I think I'm still in the past. And I would take any personal recommendations you have for that.
I started while I was in the relationship, actually. I started seeing the patterns, and I started educating myself on what the narcissist was, and I started educating on what the narcissist empath relationship is,
Mm,
and how the empath feeds the narcissist
yes.
and vice versa. Let's not just put all the blame on the narcissist. The narcissist actually feeds the empath too, because the empath wants to be wanted
Validated
and
and
wants to be
loved at
needed,
times.
right? And it's this anxious and avoidant attachment that is a cycle that just
And they want to heal
continues.
it. They want to heal it and fix it so they feel better. But they might not
Yeah,
be
I
aware
can
of
fix you.
empathy in them wanting to fix them so they themselves feel happier. And so the other person is not, their energy is not constantly in your face. But if they're aggressive types and they want their energy in your energy and to possess you kind of and your actions and thoughts, I think there are people like that. And I've been, experienced closeness with people like that. And it's so shocking to me when I find out. When I figure it out. I mean, like you said, I'd see patterns and stuff in different relationships, but it took me a long time to just trust my intuition with it, that
Right.
because they were telling me, no, 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 you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. This is why, this is why, this is why, this is why. But, in the end, I found out it wasn't necessarily a right or wrong thing. In some of these cases, it was like we are not right for each other kind of thing.
Right. I did go to college and took some psychology courses, and that really did help. Like,
Yeah, I did too. And it did help.
yeah, it really illuminates the human mind and like how thought process happens, especially with behavioral psychology. I think really helps kind of pull that out, right? And shows you why people behave the way they do and how the behavior and stimuli of the environment outside of the relationship and in their own family dynamics growing up as to what sculpted and molded them
Yes.
into the individual they are today. And you can even get courses for really lower costs. Like Google has a really great learning platform with Coursera, where you can take courses and educate yourself. And even if you're not putting it towards a degree, just to self-embetterment and self-enlightenment. I think it's really important. So on top of that, and then also I started doing a lot of meditative work, right? And I started moving my body in a way that felt meaningful to me. And whether that was going for a walk or doing yoga or working out, like I
getting
did a
in the
lot
physical,
of,
like being in the physical helps a lot, doesn't it?
well, you're constantly in a state of survival. So you're constantly getting flooded with endorphins and with cortisol and adrenaline. So having an output for all that stuff is really helpful too. Because you're burning it out of your body finally, and you can finally calm down and focus and see what's going on, right?
Sometimes, like I've said this often on podcasts, if you do something creative or athletic, we've talked about this on a recent podcast, it often will just bring a balance to the physical, which can help everything else, and
absolutely.
And so it can like work the imagination. If you get something, daydream about something you love, like a castle with a dragon or something, and that's your castle or something.
That's actually
listeners, you can't see, but my background is a castle with it.
It's a really great segue into what I was going to mention next, which is the meditative work of healing those stories that you go over in your mind, right? And you use that imagination of yours. You go into a meditative state, and you kind of, instead of going over in your mind over and over again in these cycles of what happened, you're like, this happened, so what if I had said this, what if I had said that, oh my god, you know how it is. We like to chew on it, and then we stick it in our hair, and we think about it for the rest of the day. And in this way, you can actually go back in your mind, because your mind doesn't know the difference between what you're thinking about and what you're actually doing, right? It
doesn't. And your dreams
so
seem so like,
and that's why you have anxiety attacks, you have panic attacks and stuff, because your mind's going through these scenarios, and it doesn't realize that you're not actually experiencing that, and you have a panic attack. So you go into a meditative state, and you relive that scenario that happened. But this time, you play it out in the way that is healthy, or that you would wanted to see it happen, right?
Okay.
And you can do this as many times as possible until you get it right. Right. So even if no matter what, like you get halfway through and it all goes to shit again, you can try it again. That's the great thing about the past, is that you can go back as many times as you want to fix it.
You can reframe what the past's influence are on you now, I think, by doing that, like you're saying, instead of identifying with it as part of who I am or something like that, I can make it external and a thing I have to work out. It's not a part of me,
So that's something that it does, because that's what they're doing with the ketamine right now in the hospitals. They're using ketamine to help treat depression and anxiety, because it causes that disassociation where you're pulling things out and away from you, and it's almost like putting everything in this little Merkaba, and every single facet of that Merkaba is a different issue that you're dealing with, and you can just kind of hold it in your hand and look at it for what it is instead of how it's affecting you.
I love that. Wow.
It's beautiful.
You have really learned a lot of like really great skills, and you are really wonderful explaining how your point of view, everything you've been through, and how to do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's helping me. Misty, I know you must have some questions.
Okay, so what are you doing now? You talked about the past and what you went through and everything. So what happened next after you found out, you said in your 30s that you finally were done, you got a divorce, and so what brought you to where you are today?
Well, here's the horrible thing. I wasn't even married to the man.
I mean, that's fine.
No, it's like, it's worse.
That's a good thing.
I know, reason to stay. There was like nothing there.
If you had been married, he would have had something on you.
Oh God, for sure. But so, do you believe in manifestation?
Yes.
course. Yeah.
Okay. So I started working at a school district driving a school bus.
Mhm.
And I was still with my toxic partner at the time. And a mutual friend of ours was an aide of my toxic ex, and mine was an aide at the school where I worked.
Okay.
And she kept asking me when I was going to marry this person because we've been together for like 8 years now. When are you going to get married?
Oh,
And I was like, I'm never getting married. I'm never getting married. And I got married real young at 18 because I got pregnant. And I'm like, nope, I'm never getting married again. And she's like, really? I was like, yep. I said, you want to know how soon I'm going to get married? She's like, how soon is that? I pointed to this guy that I had this really big crush on at work that I barely knew, said hi to him maybe once in a while. And I was like, I am going to get married so soon that I'm going to marry that man before I marry the guy that I'm with now. And I 2 years later, I'm walking down the aisle with that man.
I knew that was coming.
Ooh, I didn't see it coming. That's wonderful. Oh,
Yeah.
Manifested girl.
Get 'em.
And he's wonderful. He's like, after 2 weeks of being with this man, I was like, yep, I'm going to marry him.
That is so wonderful.
Aw.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
That's a great story.
So
He's
then what
so-
happened after that? Like, how did you?
Sorry, go ahead, finish.
No, what happened after that? I mean, you manifested him. So, I mean, how did you get to where you are now, where you're teaching people and doing all these? Didn't you say you have like a coven?
Oh, I used to. Yeah, that's a bit of a story, but Coven did what Coven does, and the other leader decided that they wanted to be more like a church and less like a coven. And I said, well, I'm out.
Oh no, yeah.
So
They made it religious, I guess, instead of spiritual. It sounds like.
Indeed, and I was like, I'm out. I can't do that. So
That's how I feel. I'm not really looking for a religion. I just want to meet like-minded spiritualists.
Indeed, indeed. And that was this past weekend. That was everyone from all different walks and bringing all their stuff and all their love and their spirituality, and it was beautiful. But to answer your question, Misty, so I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without my husband, without the support that he gives me, without the encouragement, because he saw in me what the last one tried to stomp down, right? And I say that he waffle stomped my ego down the drain at every opportunity. And my husband is just like, you're so smart and you know all this and you're great with psychology and you know everything about religion, because like I'm just such a nerd when it comes to religion and culture. And and he's like, oh yeah, you can do this, and like everybody absolutely loves it when you talk to them about their stuff, and they always say they feel better after they talk to you, and he's like, you have this ability that you've had since you were little, and he's like, you really want to help people, and I think you can use it to help people, and so I do, and he provides the platform for me to do it, and he's
That's
like,
so cool.
we do kind of less Healy type stuff and more psychic-y stuff. We do Renaissance festivals.
Yeah.
And I'll do like tarot card readings, and he'll dress up like he's my my handsome pirate that like hangs out outside the thing.
Oh, pirate.
And we actually had a pirate wedding. So it was wonderful.
That's so cool.
That's so fun. Yes. Did you get married on a pirate boat or ship?
I wish. Oh my God. No, but we got married at Crystal Lake.
Oh wow!
Oh, even cooler.
Fun. All kinds of fun stuff.
That is so cool.
It is. Misty loved that. She loves.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
How about that.
So, Liz, wait, before I ask you for, there's one more thing I want to ask you, but I do want to thank our sponsor, Everclear. Everclear is our sponsor. I mentioned that, and I will mention it again. Everclear is our sponsor, and they're everclear.com, or an app, website. I can't talk. I had to take some Benadryl earlier because I had an allergy attack, and it's making me really dopey.
Oh.
But yes, everclear.com is where you can get your advice from psychics and empaths, so you can get the clarity you need to create the life you deserve. And I'm an advisor on there. And lastly, Liz, where can people find you? What can they find anything out about you? Do you have a website or anything like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So My business is Harmony Kai LLC, and the website is harmonykai.com, and that's just Harmony HARMONY Kai KAI.com.
Okay.
And everything you need is there. So I do Reiki. I'm a certified sound healer, certified Reiki teacher, spiritual development coach.
I love that.
She does it all, listeners.
Does it
I
all.
do the things. I
You do the
do.
things.
Is it-
You've
I do
explored
the
far
things.
and learned much. And I think that's just great. So I think you're a real inspiration to, like, this podcast will be a real inspiration to a lot of people who have been, kind of held back by what other people have told them to think about themselves, who have not their best interests, and you show that your strength, your inner perseverance, and your belief in yourself and your spirituality possibly too, all of that together brought you to a happy place. It seems like, where you're doing your purpose with the right person that you love or seem to really connect with.
Absolutely.
And so there's so much hope out there for people who are in those kinds of situations where you're not
Yes, she did.
understood to your partner or anything.
She did that very
you.
well.
Thank you for that. Yes.
She did.
It's really about surrounding yourself with the right people and being brave enough to cut off the wrong ones, really.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
there's definitely sentiment in the saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You are who you hang around with. And I know that there's a lot of, especially with empaths, there's this connection that we have to, like, I know what it feels like to be rejected, so I don't want to reject this person. But, like, really, sometimes you just got to let them go because they're not going to
It's not good for you or them. It's not fair to them if you don't
right
love them,
And really, here's the kicker, is that the more you allow them to be where they are, the more you're enabling them. And you're
yes, and you're
really
getting
hurting them.
codependent on that back and forth cycle usually,
Right. Absolutely. And
I mean, I think we can help people like that, but we can't fix them and make them see that they're hurting us or other people,
You can't until they want it. Until they want it.
You're right. You're right.
That's exactly right. You gotta wanna.
So do you have any last words for our listeners? Anything you'd like to say or let them know about? Anything at all? Any advice? Any more advice? You have such great advice.
I have a story, actually.
A story. I love a story.
Story time. So I have a friend who is an older gentleman. He's probably somewhere, I want to say he's upper 70s, early 80s. And he was always very conservative his whole life, very religious his whole life, very close-minded and not open to anything that didn't come from the Bible, to the point where he was even, like, convinced that, certain things in the Bible, I don't want to offend anybody, but, like, he was a flat earther, right? So
okay. Yeah.
And I don't know. Anyway,
I don't relate to that either. I think for me, like, my opinion of the flat earthers is, like, I just don't think anyone really believes it. I think they just need something to bond about,
Right. Well,
the
argument is that, that's what the Bible says. That's how the Bible describes the earth. So,
but all the Bible's all interpretation. It could be said a certain way.
Right.
You can look somewhere else and it can say the same, like a total opposite thing. So it's really pick and choose with the Bible, in my opinion, living in the South anyway.
Yeah. And that's definitely, I could go on for hours about that. But
we should have you back. You want to come back, Liz?
I would love to come back.
Have a lot
whenever,
more.
Yeah.
You have a lot more
whenever you would have me, for sure. And I would love to come back. You guys are awesome. You have great energy, and I feel like we're vibing pretty good. So.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
This is great.
So this older gentleman, I don't want to use his name, but so the older gentleman lived his life this way, and then suddenly had a massive heart attack and found himself dead for several minutes.
Okay.
But when he came back, he said that he felt like he had been dead for years.
Wow.
And that he had spent years in this other place, and that he had spoken to beings that most of us can only reach through psychedelics or, an ayahuasca retreat. And that through this conversation with this being that he just sat and talked to for ages, he said years and years, almost decade,
wow.
that he learned so much and came back. When he came back, they said, "Oh, you've only been dead for," he's like, "Oh, you died for like 2 minutes or whatever." And he's
He
like,
has
I've
all these
been
memories.
gone forever, and so, and now, has this entirely different view on the world and on people and on religion and what he was doing with his life and what he now wants to do with his life, and has decided that instead of being in pursuit of some words in a book that someone claimed belongs to a deity, he's living by his heart, and he's
Yeah.
living by treating people as what they are, which is a soul walking around in a meat suit.
And some compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compassion for that soul.
And
Yeah.
instead of, being this conservative that hates this and that and is homophobic and xenophobic and misogynistic, like, he became a totally different person.
Did you
And
know him personally?
I know him personally, yes.
So, like, were you surprised that he healed?
Well, I didn't know him before. It was more
you
of
met
a
him
shock.
afterwards. Wow,
I met him
that's really cool.
after. So it was a shock to hear about how he used to be, because I know him very well as this guru that is so spiritual and so open and loves people so fully. Like people he doesn't even know. Like he's never even met them, and he treats them
love
like he's
him.
known them. Right?
Yes.
He's like, I've known you for eons. What do you mean? We come from the same source. We've known each other since the beginning of time. Like he's just,
Aw.
it's just so
That's
incredible
cool.
to just see, and then when I was told that he was once like not a nice person, I was like, get the hell out of here. Like he's been wonderful his whole life.
Yeah.
Don't lie.
Yeah. It's crazy,
But so
man.
then he told me his story, and I was blown away. And I'm like, I knew it. I've always known it. But thank you for affirming it,
Yeah. That's
So,
that's an amazing story. Thank you for that too.
yeah.
Oh, you must come back, Liz. You must.
I would love to. And the point of that story is that it doesn't matter at what point in your life you're at. It's never too late to start,
Never.
right?
Yes.
Never. This
Thank
man
you.
is in his 80s, and he has
Oh.
just in the last like 5 years started this huge commune for people to come together. It's
Cool.
never too late. It's never too late. Just
No, it's
start.
not.
Just
No.
start. It's not too late.
Yeah,
I love that.
I get upset. Like we have a regular Carol Starr. She does an astrologer who does regular podcasts with us, and she's 86 now, I think. And she's like, people get weird when they go. She said this on a podcast. People get weird when they get old. She said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep working and be, youthful and enjoy my life. She's like, I doesn't want to sit there and wait to die. Is basically what she's getting at, and that's kind of the attitude
She
I want.
does it well.
She does.
does it
Yeah,
well.
she's
Good.
amazing. And I feel like that's like something a lot of spiritual people just kind of naturally do. We stay youthful and interested and curious. Even
Absolutely.
no matter how damaged we are, we get curious about the healing because we can maybe help someone else after we're done.
Right.
If we have to get rid of it anyway because it's going to kill us.
Mhm.
In
Yep.
our relationships, but
Yeah.
man, I can't stop talking to you, Liz. I can't stop talking to you.
I know. There's so much. So much to say.
We will
sure.
take
I think there's so much that
we will take like a rain check, or it's a sunny day now. The day's crazy. It rains. Alabama's nuts right now with the weather, isn't it? Misty. It's just tornado, rain, and sun. Blah. But we'll love to have you back. If you have any other ideas, just hit me up. And I'm sure you got plenty, but hit me up and we'll schedule again. And listeners and watchers or listeners, I will have her information in the description of the podcast. And I'd like to say thank you to you, Liz.
Thank you for having me, and thank you so much to both of you. Misty, Lisa, you guys are amazing, and keep doing what you do.
Oh, we will.
We're trying.
You're helping people. You're helping people. Do what
That's
you
what we're trying
do.
to do.
Thank you.
Even if
You do
nobody's
it so well.
listening.
Right.
We're still trying.
Still try. And Misty, thank you for always trying with me.
Lisa, thanks for trying with me too.
And listeners, we love you so much. And thank you if you are listening, like Misty says. If you're not, we still love you. Goodbye. And thank you so much. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.